Please be seated. Back on the record, State of Ohio versus Daniel Groves, State of Ohio versus Jessica Groves, 19 CR 586 A and B. Is the state ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Is the defense ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Teeman, you may continue your inquiry.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, during your time with baby Dylan, did you remain in contact with Children's Services?
During my time that I had Dylan?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And were you responsible for taking him to see a pediatrician a few times?
Yes. I took him to Dr. Ali.
Dr. Ali out of Waverly?
Yes.
Okay. In the time that you had Dylan, did he suffer any physical injuries?
Any physical injuries? No.
Yes. Okay. I'd like to direct your attention to a family team meeting at Children's Services Board. Do you recall being part of a family team meeting?
Yes.
Do you recall the date of that?
The date of that?
Yeah.
Okay. So it was January 25th, I believe.
Okay, 24th or 25th, somewhere in there?
Yeah, somewhere right there, yeah.
And that was followed by a visitation with the parents, is that right?
Right, yes.
Okay.
I met Dylan's parents, and then they
Okay,
visited
Daniel and
with him.
Jessica Groves?
Yes.
Okay.
And then they visited with him for an hour.
Okay. Were you part of that visitation?
I talked to them before I left the room, but no, it was their time to spend with him.
Okay. Approximately how long had you talked with them?
Probably about 5 minutes.
Okay. Did you have an opportunity in that 5 minutes to observe the demeanor of the parents?
Yes.
What was Jessica's demeanor at the time?
I felt like there was a possibility that she was under the influence of something at that time.
Okay. Well, let me see what your knowledge is of that kind of thing. Okay. So, as a school teacher, how many years of experience have you had teaching?
18.
In that 18 years of experience, have you had occasion to run into people or deal with people that are under the influence of substances?
Yes.
Okay. Approximately how many times?
Have I seen someone intoxicated or
Yeah.
under the influence of drugs? 10.
Okay. 10 times maybe? Is that in the last few years or is that over your entire career?
Probably in the last, 5-6 years.
Okay. And in your experience just being a citizen and growing up here and observing people on the streets, have you had experience with that as well?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. What kind of behavior was Mrs. Groves exhibiting?
She was kind of flailing her arms around, and she was really happy and excited and more giddy than happy.
Okay. Now, is it fair to say that people are sometimes like that when they're happy?
Mm-hmm.
What made you think this was something not normal?
Just under the circumstances, it was kind of unexpected behavior to walk into Children's Services with the baby, and then to just see that I just felt she was under the influence of something at that time.
Now, what kind of demeanor did you see from Mr. Groves?
He was quiet. I didn't suspect anything as far as him being under the influence of anything.
Okay. With regard to their demeanor, did you express some concerns to Children's Services?
Yes.
Okay.
I asked if they would drug test.
Okay. At some point, were you advised that Dylan was going to be placed back with his parents?
I assumed he would be eventually, not in 12 days, but eventually.
Okay. When were you advised that he was going to be placed back? Was it at that meeting or shortly thereafter?
No, it wasn't at that meeting. I believe the meeting was on a Wednesday, and it was the Friday after that Wednesday. I had actually called Children's Services to find out when our next visit was going to be, because normally you have a weekly visit. And I was just calling to find out when our next visit was going to be so that I could, just have it on my schedule.
Okay.
And then they informed me that he was going to be reunited and to have him at the office that following Monday morning.
Okay. Now, that following Monday, would that have been the 28th?
Yes, yeah, it was
Okay.
28th.
And were you part of the actual transition or exchange back to the family?
Yes, Daniel was there to pick up Dylan.
When did he arrive?
Okay, so I was there at 9 and he got there about 9:15.
Okay. And how was his demeanor then?
The same as the first time I met him.
Okay. And what happened during that exchange?
He brought in a car seat for Dylan, and I was getting Dylan's belongings together.
What did you do with those belongings?
I gave them to Daniel.
Okay. And
I gave him
go ahead.
some formula diapers, his blanket, his quilt from the hospital, some pictures. I gave him a Bible.
Okay. Now, I want to hand you what have been marked as State's Exhibits 22 and 23, showing these to opposing counsel. Ma'am, I'm handing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 22. Do you recognize this item?
Yes.
Okay, what is this? It's actually a picture of the picture, but what is it?
It's a picture of Dylan that I took.
Okay, is that one of the pictures you gave to?
Yes.
Okay. So State's Exhibit 23. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
What is it?
Another picture of Dylan.
Okay, is that a picture you took as well?
Yeah.
State's Exhibit 22, Your Honor. For the jury's view. State's Exhibit 23. For the jury's view. The record reflects she's identified those as Dylan Grove. Did you provide Daniel with anything else besides the...
I gave him a letter to him and Jessica.
Okay. And did you provide your number or anything
I
of that?
did. I just basically in the letter said that how much I loved Dylan, cared about him, and that I just wanted to be maybe, if I could be involved or to have them maybe just let me know about some milestones that he reaches.
Did you offer to help if they were needing
I did.
help?
I said, if you ever need anything, to call me, and I gave him my phone number.
Did they ever reach out to you after that?
No.
Is Daniel Groves in the courtroom here today?
Yes.
Could you point him out for the court?
He's over there.
Is Jessica Groves in the courtroom here today?
She's sitting over there.
Your Honor, so record could so reflect.
Record will reflect the witnesses pointed to and identified both the defendants, Daniel Groves and Jessica Groves.
Thank you, ma'am. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Taven. Mr. Stratton, you may cross-examine.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mrs. Rowling. You mentioned that you're a teacher out at Memphis.
Right.
Okay. You mentioned that over the years that you have taught that you have seen our drug problem firsthand.
Right.
You've seen it in the kids, way they're dealing with stuff and how they act in class.
Yeah, the effects of different things, yes, with that.
Okay. I'm guessing some of that had to do with why you became a foster parent.
It is, yes. I had a couple foster kids in my room, and they kind of brought me to the decision of becoming a foster parent.
Okay. Earlier, you mentioned that when you took Dylan as a foster kid, that you got a crib and stuff from different places.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, how much as a foster parent are you out of pocket that you spend on your own?
Oh, a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
Does Children's Services reimburse you for every bit of that?
That we get for buying things for
Yeah, let's say you said you got a crib or diapers or stuff like that. Do they reimburse you for all that, everything that you spend?
No.
No, okay. As a foster to adopt, you understand that Children's Services tries to reunify with the family,
Right.
okay? And you've had that happen in the past
Right.
and with this case, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And it is hard, I'm sure.
It is hard. You get attached.
You get attached.
Yeah.
When Dylan was returned, and let me correct something. Earlier, I think you said that the family team meeting was on January 25th. I think it was the 24th.
Okay. Might have been.
Yeah. I think that's what Patricia Kraft earlier testified to. That was on the 24th. And I think you called on the 25th back
Okay.
to make your comments to Children's Services on the 25th.
On the 25th. Okay.
So you had the team meeting on the 24th.
Okay.
During or after that team meeting, did you make any comments to Children's Services about?
You may. Raise your question, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Bowling, when you made a phone call to Children's Services, you had a couple comments about Jessica Groves specifically. What were those comments?
I felt like she was under the influence of something. I felt like she was high on something.
But you didn't mention that on the day of the family team meeting, did you?
I did. I called after the team meeting.
Okay. Are you surprised that there is no record of you calling after the team meeting on the 24th?
Am I surprised? No.
Okay. Why are you not surprised?
I'm just not.
Okay. Does CPS, Children's Services, listen to you often?
Your Honor, Mr. Stratton, why don't you be a little more specific in your question?
I have.
Okay. Well, let me be more specific on this issue here. You knew that Dylan was going to be returned to the father.
Right.
You objected to that, correct?
I didn't feel like 12 days was long enough. Yes,
Okay.
I disagreed with that.
All right, we'll leave it there. Is it fair to say, Ms. Bowling, that without people like you, as a foster parent, foster to adopt, that our system with children's services would not function. Is that fair to say?
The children's services wouldn't function if there weren't foster parents?
Yes.
Right, yeah.
Okay. And that is because of people like you who are willing to take in children that we're able to take care of drug-addicted babies.
Right.
No further questions, John.
Thank you, Mr. Stratton. Ms. Scott, you may cross-examine the witness.
Good afternoon, Ms. Bowling.
Good afternoon.
You are a foster parent. You are not an employee of the Children's Services, Scioto County Children's Services Board, are you?
An employee?
Yeah, you're not an employee.
No,
Okay.
I'm a foster parent.
You're a foster parent, correct. And is it fair to say that it is the agency and the agency's decision and the guidelines that they must follow that dictate the reunification standards? Is that correct?
It is their decision, not mine.
Okay. And that they were the ones, although you were a participant in the team meeting, it is their
When I say
decision.
the team meeting was just me meeting Daniel and Jessica and then them visiting with Dylan. That
Okay,
was the
so
team
there was
meeting.
no discussion
No.
at that time in regards to what was to be accomplished
No
by
plan,
the
nothing.
parents?
Right.
Or anything like that was involved in that
No, it
meeting
was just
at all?
meeting each other.
Okay, great, I'm glad you cleared that up. But you do agree, at the end of the day, it is the agency and the standards that they set and the guidelines that they must follow is what led to Dylan being placed back with Daniel Groves.
Right, it wasn't, definitely not my decision.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor. Thank you, Ms. Bowling.
Is this witness excused?
Excuse.
She is, Your Honor.
Yes, John.
Mr. Teeman?
Yes, Your Honor.
She's not sat in during the trial. Is there any thought that she'll be recalled to testify? You don't need to make that decision now, counsel. I'll let you.
Your Honor, we don't anticipate calling Ms. Bowling back to testify if she's so inclined to witness any of the trial. We have no objection.
Ms. Scott, Mr. Stratton?
I do not, you want to approach?
No, we can address it.
I do not anticipate calling her as a witness in our case in chief, Your Honor, so I would have no
Is
objection.
there any objection to me releasing her from the earlier separation order if she chooses to sit in?
No, Your Honor, there's no objection.
No objection.
And you can step out. You're certainly welcome to sit in if you wish. You're certainly not required to. Mr. Teeman, you may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, the state would call Adam Giles.
Detective, can you raise your right hand for me, please, sir? You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Please have a seat. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Sir, if you would introduce yourself to the jury and spell your last name for the record.
Adam Giles, Giles. I'm a detective with Scioto County Sheriff's Office. Been employed there for 20 years.
For how long?
20.
Okay. If you would explain to the members of the jury what some of your job duties are as a detective at the Scioto County Sheriff's Office.
Primarily investigating any crimes that rise to the degree of felonies, such as breaking and entering, burglary, rapes, felonious assault, stuff like that.
Let me direct your attention to June 2019. Did you have an occasion to become involved in the investigation of Daniel and Jessica Groves?
I did.
Explain to the jury how you became involved.
The morning of June 10th, I believe it was, When I arrived at work, I was told by my immediate supervisor, which is Captain Murphy, that he had had a meeting with the prosecutor's office and they wanted to obtain a search warrant for the residence of Daniel Groves on Mount Hope Road, and he asked that I take care of that for him.
Okay. What was the nature of the concern? Why was there a search warrant?
They were looking for the missing child, Dylan.
Looking for the baby that nobody had seen, baby Dylan?
Correct.
Okay. So as a result of that, what did you do?
He gave me a little bit of the backstory, told me about the conversations he'd had at the prosecutor's office. I dug through some of our records, times we'd been out there, obtained a copy of the court order from Judge Lemons, directing Children's Services and the Sheriff's Office to go looking for the child and take possession of the child. Looked at our call logs to see how many times we'd been out there, stuff relative to building my probable cause to take the warrant to the judge to be signed.
Okay. So are you saying to the jury that you prepared that warrant on behalf of your office?
I did.
Okay. What did you do after that?
Once I gathered the information, I typed up the affidavit for the warrant, brought it to the prosecutor's office to be reviewed by the prosecutor. There were some minor changes made at that point. I took it to the judge, swore out the affidavit in front of him, and he issued our warrant to search the residence.
Okay. Explain to the jury what takes place after you secure that warrant from the judge.
Once I got the warrant, I went back to our office and started to prepare a plan to go execute the warrant. Called some of the guys. Most of my time of my employment was spent on the drug task force. Those are guys I've served a lot of warrants with, so I asked for their assistance. They came to our office. We got a plan together for the execution and then proceeded out to the residence on Mount Hope Road.
Okay. Why do you ask for assistance from other officers?
Just the nature of the warrant itself. I mean, going into somebody's home with a search warrant is one of the most intrusive things we do as law enforcement. We want to make sure everything's correct. We want to make sure we have the proper manpower for the situation and so on and so forth.
Okay. And after that, did you respond to 2241 Mount Hope Road?
I did.
Okay. And what, if you would explain to the members of the jury how you guys set up out there and what happened?
Okay. During our planning, different options were talked about how we would go about the execution. Sometimes it's dynamic. We come up, knock on the door, wait a couple minutes, announce ourselves, and knock down the front door. We decided this time that that's not something we were going to do. We were going to use a technique called surround and call out, or breach and hold, which basically, if we're not running in there to secure evidence that we think they're destroying or something like that, it's safer for us and it's safer for the people at that residence. If we just simply show up, we surround the house, make it known that we're there, make it known that we have a search warrant, and ask the residents to exit the home before we go in and look for the stuff we're looking for. So we decided that that would be the best method in this situation, and that's what we proceeded out there and did.
And how are you asking the residents to come out of there?
Over the PA speaker. I mean, initially we knocked on the door, told them the sheriff's office search warrant. We got no response to that. We started.
Is that done loudly?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
We want everybody to know who we are and what we're doing there, just so they don't mistake it for someone trying to break into their home.
What we call a cop knock.
Yes.
So you're beating on the door?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Does anybody come out at that time?
Not at that point, no ma'am.
Okay. So then you said you utilize a PA system. You're amplifying your voice.
Correct. PA
What are you
system.
saying out there?
This is the sheriff's office. We have your house surrounded. I'm calling Daniel by name, telling him to come out of the house. We had a fairly good indication he was there initially. Once we came down the driveway, we had 4 or 5 officers that were ready to go up to the front door and deployed different officers to the back corners of the house. During our very initial approach, one of the officers on the back said it appeared that somebody had looked out the back door. So
Okay.
we assumed somebody was in there, didn't know who.
Okay. How long are you out there doing this before anyone appears, or does anyone appear?
I think it was about 15 to 20 minutes. Jessica comes to the front door and comes out of the house at that point.
What's her demeanor at the front door?
She's aggravated, irritated, upset that we're there, screaming at us.
What's she screaming?
You know, what the F are you doing here? leave us alone, we didn't do anything, what do you want, why are you, just, she's very agitated at our presence there at that point.
Okay. Does she come out of the house?
Yes, she comes out of the house and comes to us.
Is that at your direction?
Yes.
Okay. Do you ask her about the whereabouts of Daniel Groves?
We do.
What does she tell you?
I mean, my initial, we get her away from, there's a single wide trailer, there's a camper and a truck in the driveway at the time. We've kind of at this point taken a position behind this truck and the camper as we're shouting commands at the house. So we bring her back to us, which is behind.
Why are you doing that?
We're behind cover and concealment just in case there's something that occurs there. We get her back to us and I inquire with her who else is in the house. She's not very cooperative with me, doesn't want to tell me who's in the house. I ask her if Daniel's in there. I get vague answers to everything I ask. I ask if Dylan was in there, if the baby was there. She initially said we don't have a baby. I pressed her on she mentions about another child that was with somebody else, and we informed her that we were there looking for the baby.
Okay.
She informed me at that point that Children's Services had come prior to me, didn't indicate whether it was a day, a week, or whatever, and had the child at that time.
Okay. Do you take additional measures to ascertain whether the defendant, Daniel Groves, is inside that residence?
We repeatedly asked her. Like I said, she was very agitated. She didn't like our presence there. There was a heated moment between officers. She was cussing at them. They were hollering at her.
Okay, let me interrupt you just for a second. Do you make any kind of approach or entry to the house?
At that point, no.
After this whole conversation where you're telling me you're not getting anywhere?
Yes.
Okay.
At that point, we had taken Jessica and put her in a court or a vehicle with one of the court officers, Greg Dunham. He was back there trying to ascertain where the child was from her and whether Daniel was in the house as we're continuing to yell on the PA to get somebody else. Because in the same time period, the same guy out back thinks he still saw somebody at the back door once she's exited us from the front. He's not 100% positive, so we still think somebody's inside, so we get her back up the driveway, and we're still trying to make contact with whoever's in the house and get them to come out. A period of time, probably 20 minutes goes on. We can see in one end of the trailer, it's kind of all windows.
Let me interrupt you just for a second. I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 24. The record for the ring flag, I'm showing that to the defense counsel. So if I could show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 24 and ask you if you recognize that document.
That's a rough draft of the outline of what I saw out there, and I drew that myself.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me put that up here on the screen. And I think you were starting to explain the areas inside the trailer, so I wanted to have a diagram so that the jury could understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, we had taken a position right around where that smaller thing is, where the camper is. We can see in windows from the far end of the camper, which is in the end of the trailer marked kitchen. We approach those windows and we can see into the kitchen. There's a small island type thing out there, and then into the living room. We don't see anybody in there. There's some dogs in there. Dogs are barking this entire time. Through the kitchen, like I said, we can see into there. We're not getting any contact with anybody inside the trailer at this point. And
Detective, if you would, I think the judge has a laser pointer that you can use to show the jury where you are and what you're doing.
We're looking in windows down here at this end of the trailer. We can see limited what's in the first two rooms, so we're not making any contact with anybody inside. So the team that was assembled out front, we decided to do what's called a breach and hold or limited penetration, which means we're going to open the door up, we're going to take a peek from the door. If we feel it's safe enough, we're going to enter just right into that living room and kitchen and see what we can see and hear what we can hear, to see if is anybody trying to communicate with us, is there anybody laying on the ground, stuff like that.
Let me interrupt you just for a second. Before you enter this residence and do that limited penetration, how long have you been out there?
I would say 40, 45 minutes, something to that effect.
Okay. Go ahead and tell them what happens when you do that.
So when we do our limited penetration, we make our way into the living room and the kitchen. I look down that hallway. I don't know if there's 2 or 3 doors. It's like on that diagram when I do it. There are several bedrooms and a bathroom there. I don't know if those are all in the exact same order they were, but it's a typical single wide trailer layout. There's a hallway down the back, there's doors to my left, there's a back door on the right, and there's a door straight ahead of me. We see several closed doors and a partially open door on the very back room there that's labeled master bedroom. We're at the end of this hallway, we're hollering down, we're not getting any response from anybody.
So you are at the end of the hallway where the living room
We're right here in
is,
this area right here.
and you're yelling.
Yes. Sheriff's office, we have a search warrant. Daniel, if you're in here, come out with your hands up. Just repeated commands such as that.
Any response?
We get absolutely nothing.
Okay. What do you do in response to that?
At that point, we decided for officer safety and that we were dealing with the possibility of a child. And the reason we didn't rush in here is because some limited intelligence had told us, and I don't know if it was through a social worker or who it was, that there were some deers and stuff hanging on the wall. We take all that stuff into account when we're going to go serve these warrants. That tells me that this guy's possibly a hunter and possibly has a shotgun or a rifle in his house. In a trailer, you fire a shotgun or a rifle from one end to the other, it's liable to go through every wall in there. So once we get in there...
Let me interrupt you just for a second. Is that information that you want to obtain anytime you're going out to do a search warrant if you can?
Absolutely. The maximum amount of information we can get about where we're going and what they might have is stuff we use in our briefing and our planning as to the method we're going to use to go into the place. So once we get into the living room and kitchen, we're making no contact. We've got multiple shut doors. What we don't want to do, because it's a single wide trailer and a skinny hallway, is start pushing down that hallway and then have to confront somebody from the side when I've got an empty door in front of us. So at that point, we decide it's safer for us and safer for the people inside if we back out and try to do a negotiated surround and call out again. At that point is when I decided to call for assistance from the Ohio State Highway Patrol SRT team.
Okay, let me interrupt you just for a second. What is an SRT team?
It's the Highway Patrol statewide special response team. They're funded through Homeland Security funds. They have all the bells and whistles and nice toys that I would love to have in situations like that. So we call them and use them. We back out, form our perimeter. I've contacted my dispatch and the captain and requested the SRT respond to our location to help us with a possible barricaded suspect.
How long does it take for SRT to arrive, approximately?
From the time I called for them to the time we approached the house the very next time, they're following in. They're funneling in because they're coming from all over the state. But the main vehicle we use with the tools and stuff on it comes from Columbus, Ohio. It's an armored personnel carrier. It's called a Lincoln Bearcat. It's got the lighting equipment we needed because of the time of day it's getting. It's got a bigger PA. It's also got robots. It's got less than lethal munitions in it, stuff to that effect. So it's probably 2.5 to 3 hours after my initial request to the time they get there. During that time, we're not doing it every minute, but every 15, every 20 minutes, we're still trying to make contact inside, come out, come out, come out.
Okay. About what time was this that you ended up out there?
I believe it was 4:30 to 4:45, our initial.
Okay.
Probably before 5 o'clock, before Jessica exited, and probably getting 7:30 prior to SRT, their team arriving, the equipment arriving that we needed.
Okay. And once they arrive, you said, before I go there, you said between the time that you call them and the time that they actually arrive, you're continuing to attempt to make contact.
Yes.
Are you doing that through the PA system you mentioned?
Yes.
Okay. Any response?
None.
All right. What happens after SRT arrives?
So we assembled their team and myself, get in their vehicle, go down the driveway. They've decided that they want to enter this camper because we want to get right to the front door. They want to go in and clear out that camper and make sure that there's nobody beside us or behind us. So we pull up to the front porch of that vehicle, or of that trailer, right here in this area. Pointed towards the front porch, a team exits our vehicle, gets out, clears the camper, there's nobody in there. They start approaching the front door, and they do exactly what we had done earlier, a limited penetration. They send a couple of their guys in, they take a look around, they see the same thing we saw, they back out. Pardon me. At that point, they decided it's the smartest thing to do, that we'll send the robot in,
Okay.
which is what we did.
Explain to the members of the jury what that robot looks like and what it does.
The robot's probably about the size of that stand that you're using out there to project up onto that screen. It can climb steps, it can move furniture, it can open doors. It's got a camera on it. It's got several cameras on it. It's got
So
lights.
it's a couple feet tall?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So we deploy it into the house. It makes its way. We can see there's nothing in the kitchen, nothing in the living room. Like earlier, I'm actually in the vehicle where the gentleman is controlling this vehicle, and there's a screen in there. As soon as he rounds the corner to look down that hallway, on the screen, I tell him, I said, the gentleman's got to be in there. If you remember when I told you, when we did our limited penetration and looked down the hallway, the door at the end of the hallway was partially open, probably a foot and a half. When they turned the robot down the hallway, that door had been shut. So there's no way anybody got out of there because we had the place surrounded. We knew that he was down there in that room. That robot also has microphone, two-way communication on it. Instead of shouting from outside from the cars, now we're talking from it going down this hallway, telling whoever's in the bedroom to come out. We get no response again. They get the robot down the hallway to that door, knock on the door with the robot. It's pretty cool. It can do a lot of things. They don't get any response from that. The door is shut. They can't push it open. So it's got an arm on it. The arm actually articulates, and they open the door with the robot. The robot pushes the door open. As that robot makes it into the doorway, the camera pans around, and to the left of that doorway, you could see somebody laying in the bed there, and they sit up. At the same time that happened, one of the Highway Patrol SRT team guys did what they call a break and rake. It's where they'll break the window and clear anything out of it so they can get a view in from a different angle from the back. That happened at about the exact same time that robot goes into that.
So they're
room.
breaking the back windows of that.
Yes.
Could you use the pointer and show the jury where those windows were located?
It was somewhere in this back corner. I don't know if it was on the one or the two side, but it was in the back of the room there somewhere.
Okay.
But at that point, Mr. Grove stands up. I recognize that it's him through the camera on the thing. He's actually looks kind of stunned that there's a robot sitting in his hallway.
How do you recognize it as him?
We have pictures of him prior to going out there that day.
Is that
In our
also something
briefing.
you do
Yes.
before you execute a search warrant?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And
All right.
at that point, they communicated with Mr. Groves to exit the house. They told him to step over the robot. He stepped over the robot, came to the front door, was met by the SRT team, and taken into custody at that point. They brought him back away from there. I spoke to him briefly, just as I did her when she was brought out. Explained to him why we were there. He said he'd been asleep the whole time. I asked him where the child was, and he gave me the same exact response. Children's Services had come and taken the child.
Okay. If I could have just one moment. Your Honor, at this time, I have no further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchinson. Mr. Stratton, you may cross-examine.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Detective.
How are you, sir?
Good. You said you were there for about 15 to 20 minutes before Jessica came out?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. You said she came out screaming. Would you define that as her being belligerent?
Aggravated,
Belligerent, correct?
probably.
Thank you. No further questions, John.
Thank you, Mr. Stratton. Ms. Scott, you may cross-examine.
Your Honor, I don't have questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Ms. Hutchinson, any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Is this witness excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
Detective, you're free to go. Thank you. State may call their next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. State of Ohio, we call Captain John Murphy.
Captain, will you raise your right hand for me, please? Sir, do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please have a seat. Mr. Tiemann, you may inquire.
Sir, would you state your name for the record? John Murphy. And how do you spell Murphy for the court reporter?
M-U-R-P-H-Y.
Thank you. How are you employed?
I'm a captain at the Scioto County Sheriff's Office, overseeing the detective division.
How long have you been with the Scioto County Sheriff's Department?
Nearly 27 years.
How long have you been a captain over the detective division?
This time, right at 3 years.
Were there other roles that you served as a captain with the Scioto County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, I've been a captain over the jail twice. Another time as captain over investigations, as well as over the 911 communication center.
Sir, I'd like to direct your attention to January of 2019, and subsequent to that, mid-year 2019, spring. Did you become familiar with an investigation or an issue involving a child in the custody of the Scioto County Children's Services?
Yes.
Specifically, did you become familiar with an issue regarding an infant by the name of Dylan Groves?
Yes.
How did you become familiar with that matter?
I had overheard some conversation between one of the other captains and the sheriff dealing with trying to locate the child. Had officers out there multiple times making attempts with Children's Services, trying to do welfare checks on the child.
And at some point, did you become actively involved in looking for this child?
I did.
Do you recall an incident on May 20th, 2019 here in Scioto County with regard to looking for this child?
Yes, sir.
What roughly was the location of that incident?
2241 Mountain Hope Road. The sheriff had asked Chief Deputy Miller and myself to go out, take an unmarked pickup truck that we have that's fully equipped with lights and sirens, to go out and see if we can find the Groves and the infant.
All right. And you mentioned 2241 Mount Hope Road. Is that Otway, Ohio?
Yes.
And is that in Scioto County?
Yes, sir, it is.
And what specifically were you looking for at that point in time?
Specifically, we was trying to find Mr. and Mrs. Groves in an attempt to locate baby Dylan.
Okay. And what happened that day?
Chief Deputy Miller and I, when we arrived at Mount Hope Road, we went to the location. The driveway was very rough and rutted out. We did have a four-wheel drive pickup truck. We drove up the driveway. At the end of the driveway, it is cabled off. There was motion detectors up on the trees that would indicate anybody that's coming around. We got out of the vehicle. We walked up to the trailer. There was dogs outside, and you could actually hear them inside when we was trying to make contact. Walked around the trailer, never observed anybody there, never heard any commotion inside except for the animals that was inside. We actually end up backing back out of the drive because there was nowhere to turn around. And when we backed out, I observed the neighbor directly across, which actually lives at 2242 Mount Hope Road, Otway, was outside cutting grass. Pulled into the driveway, got out of the vehicle, walked up, and he was his back was to me, so I didn't want to walk up and startle him because he was an older gentleman. So I kind of got off to the side where he could see me out of his peripheral vision so I wouldn't startle him. I told him who it was. He turned the lawnmower off. He said, "I know why you're here." I said, "Well, why am I here?" He said, "You're trying to locate the Groves." I said, "Yes, I am." I said, "By the way, have you happened to see the child?" And he said, "I have not." And I said, "Could you tell me when's the last time?" He said, "I haven't seen the child for just haven't seen it." And I said, "Well, do you ever see them?" He said, "Well, they leave early morning hours and they come back late at night. They're usually on a four-wheeler riding up and down the roadway." While I was having a conversation with him, I actually could hear what I believe to be a four-wheeler coming down Mount Hope Road. And I asked him, when I could see him coming, I asked him, I said, "Is that them? Is that them?" And when I looked, I seen people who I believed was them based on the photos that I had seen of them. And as they passed his driveway, he definitely said, "Yes, that is both them." Myself and Chief Deputy Miller ran back, got back in the pickup truck. I took out of the driveway and I initiated the siren and the lights on the pickup truck. They slowed down and they went to pull over. As they went to pull over, I tried to maneuver there was an embankment there and a ditch, so I tried to pull over to kind of try to pin them in. Then when Mr. Groves seen what I was doing, he accelerated the four-wheeler and took off through a field, and I gave chase through the grassy field, and they hit the woods and we could not pursue any further.
You had mentioned that you had viewed pictures of Mr. Groves and Mrs. Groves through the sheriff's office?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And did you get a good look at them as they drove by on that four-wheeler?
Absolutely, I did.
The people that you saw on that four-wheeler that day, May 20th, are they in the courtroom here today?
Absolutely, they are. They're sitting here at the defense table.
Your Honor, if the record could reflect.
Record will reflect that the captain has pointed to and identified the defendants, Daniel Groves and the defendant, Jessica Groves.
Were you aware of a prior a pursuit or a short pursuit with Daniel on a four-wheeler?
I had heard discussion from other officers, but nothing that I knew.
No
directly.
personal knowledge.
Yes,
okay.
That's correct.
All right. And is there any other way that you were personally involved in this investigation?
Yes, there was.
Okay.
That was on June 10th. I actually made contact with your office. Myself, Sheriff Dunham, came over and met with you and your staff to discuss the possibility of obtaining a search warrant for the property of the Groves.
Okay. And were you also involved in the recovery efforts, or at least peripherally, of the body of Dylan Groves?
Absolutely.
Okay. And is it fair to say that you assigned a lead detective to that was taking lead on that investigation at that point?
I did, Detective Jody Conkle.
Right. One moment. Thank you, sir. No further questions, Your Honor.
Newman, Mr. Stratton, you may cross-examine the witness.
Your Honor, I have no questions for the captain.
Mr. Stratton, Ms. Scott, you may cross-examine.
Your Honor, I have no questions for the captain. Thank you.
Is this witness free to go?
Yes, he is. Thank you, Captain.
Will be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
Captain, you're free to go.
Thanks, sir.
Mr. Teeman, you may call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state would call Jessica Byrd.
If you'll raise your right hand for me, please. Ma'am, do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? You may be seated. Ma'am, there is media in the courtroom here today. Do you have any objection to your image being filmed or photographed during your testimony? No objection? No objection. Ms. Hutchinson, you may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ma'am, if you would, please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your last name for the record.
My name's Jessica Byrd. My last name is B-Y-R-D.
Okay. Where are you employed?
At Mahajan Therapeutics in
Okay.
Portsmouth.
Where is that located in Portsmouth?
It's on Walnut Street. It's actually 52 going back towards like Willersburg area. It's on the right-hand side, right off of that main street, Walnut Street.
Okay. How long have you been so employed?
Since May 1st, 2016.
Okay. And if you would, explain to the members of the jury what your job title is there and what you do.
I'm a therapist. I'm a drug and alcohol counselor. We do assessments. We also assist in diagnosing if we notice some of the symptoms that would benefit the client to be coming to our agency. We do individual sessions with clients, group counseling, drug screening, things like that.
Okay. Prior to your employment at Mahajan Therapeutics in 2016, were you employed in drug treatment before that, or therapy type treatment before that?
Yes, ma'am.
What is your previous employment?
Well, before working at Mahajan, I was at Focus Residential for 8 months, and before that I worked at Community Counseling and Spectrum and Star Community Justice Center.
Okay.
Over 12 years in all.
Okay, so you mentioned Focus, Spectrum, and Community Counseling?
Yeah.
Okay, and those are all
Drug and alcohol treatment
drug and alcohol
centers.
treatment centers?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then you were also employed, did you say, at STAR? Okay, what is STAR?
STAR is a community-based correctional facility. I worked there in 2007 to 2012 with about an 8-month break in between there. I was a victim advocate at Pike County during that 8 months through a grant. And so that's, they're a community-based correctional facility. You can't leave, it's locked down facility, but it does center around drug and alcohol treatment.
Okay, and what was your job title there?
I was a therapist, counselor.
Okay. If you would, explain to the members of the jury what your educational background is.
I have a bachelor's in English Humanities from Shawnee State, and I'm a licensed chemical dependency counselor too.
Okay. Let me direct your attention to January 2019. Did you have an occasion to do an assessment on defendant Jessica Groves?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall how that referral came to you?
I believe it came from Children's Services.
Okay. And then after that assessment, what was this defendant to do? What did you advise her to do?
After the assessment, we recommended that she do individual therapy, group counseling, both of those 2 times a week. Women's group we have on a Friday afternoon, so we would have wanted her to go to that as well. And drug testing every time we're there.
Okay. And what's the policy with Mahajan Therapeutics regarding drug testing of patients or clients?
We, everybody is required to drug screen every time that they're there, and they're always monitored, and we have people supervising them and, you know, making sure they're not faking it or whatever.
When you say faking it, what do you mean?
Trying to take a drug, or trying to, you know, have fake urine or take things that might clean their system out, stuff. We have things like that happen, but, you know, that's why we have people observing drug screens.
And so would she have started treatment that following week?
Yes.
Okay. You recall how many times that following week she was there?
I can't off the top of my head, but I know I saw her for an individual on February 8th, I believe.
Okay.
I can look at it. Yeah.
Do you have records there or notes there with you about this? Okay. Are you referring to those to refresh your recollection?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So on the 18th of January, we had made a recommendation to have her to do a mental health assessment, which is pretty common. You know, usually if you have a drug and alcohol problem, you've usually got mental health issues. And I saw her on the 8th of February for an individual.
Was she, to your knowledge, taking any drug screens between assessment on January 18th and February 8th when you saw her?
Yes.
Okay. How many, do you know?
I do not know. I don't know.
Okay. To your knowledge, were those drug screens, what were the results of those drug screens, if you know?
They would have been clean because anytime there's a positive drug screen, it's always on my desk, and we're always, you know.
So you would be notified by your staff?
Yes, immediately.
Okay. What happens after February 8th?
She started to become very inconsistent, and eventually then just totally stopped coming. We have case managers who also try to contact them and get them to be re-engaged. We also try to contact to re-engage a client if they've been not coming.
Okay. What attempts do you make to contact the defendant, Jessica Groves?
We would make phone calls. The case manager assigned to that client might go out to their house even to just try to talk to them to see if they're there. Anything, I mean, you know, we can do to try to get them to come back and help them. That's what it's.
Okay. You said she was a referral from Children's Services? Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you contact them if there's a non-compliance issue?
Yes.
Okay, and did you guys do that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know how many times?
Yes.
How many times?
Well, I had an attempt to contact her about, she started becoming non-compliant with her attendance. So on the 14th, I had attempted to try to contact Children's Services. And then on the 15th, I did actually speak to her caseworker to tell her she wasn't coming. And then on the 19th of February, I attempted to contact Children's Services again to continue to tell them, you know, she's not coming.
Let me interrupt you just for a second. When you make these attempts, are you leaving messages?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. And then on the 22nd was another attempt about her noncompliance because she was not coming at all at this point. I mean, from the 14th and on. The 27th, I did talk to a caseworker, and on the 1st of March, I continued to tell them that she's not coming.
You're just updating them. She's still not coming.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then on the 2nd of April, I actually did speak to her caseworker again.
Okay. At some point, did you put a letter in writing and send it
Yes.
about noncompliance?
Yes.
Okay. Between February 8th, well, after February 8th, did you have an occasion to see her any more after that?
I did see her one time on the 26th of March.
Under what circumstances?
It was a group counseling session, and
Okay.
she came in for it. So apparently, you know, we had thought our attempts to re-engage had maybe started to work, that we were going to try to get her back on track.
Okay. How long had it been since she had been there, as far as you know?
Well, February 8th was when I saw her, and then that March 26th was the next time I actually laid eyes on her.
Okay. So she wasn't coming to individual therapies with you?
No.
Do you know whether or not she was going to groups?
No, she wasn't going to group.
Okay. How did she appear, or what was her demeanor when you saw her on March 26th?
It was a little bit different. I mean, it was kind of, she was very defensive. It seemed like she was edgy, a little angry, just upset that Children's Services wasn't letting her husband just be with the baby. She just couldn't understand why they were, continuing to.
Did her demeanor cause you any concerns as a therapist in drug treatment?
Yes, I noticed it was a little, like I said, edgy, angry. From my experience, behaviors like that tend to represent some methamphetamine use, very, just edgy and angry and irritated about things.
Okay. There are other services that Mahajan can provide to patients, is that right?
Yes.
Explain to the jury what those are.
We have mental health services that we can provide to the clients. We also have Vivitrol. It's a medicated assisted program where we can help a client to get off alcohol and drugs through medicated assisted treatment such as Vivitrol.
Okay. And maybe that was probably the way I phrased that question, but do you offer other assistance or services to clients? In other words, can you help them with transportation or other things?
Yes.
Okay.
We have case
Explain
managers.
what kind of things you offer there. I'm sorry.
Our case managers, we offer them transportation. We offer them, assistance with counseling, assistance with any barriers that they may have in the community that need to be addressed. Our case managers are in the field, active, always, working within the community. And they will, utilize certain means of transportation to help clients to get there if they can.
Okay. I can have just a second. I have nothing further at this time.
Counsel approach for a moment.
I have nothing further.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchinson. Mr. Stratton, you may cross-examine.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Byrd. I have a few questions. You have been a therapist, drug and alcohol counselor since 2016?
Since 2007.
2007?
Yeah.
Okay. But you've worked for Mahajan since 2006?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So you have, I'll just call you a first responder because that's what you are, correct?
Mm-hmm.
You're right there on ground zero for this drug problem we have here, correct?
Yes.
You do quite a few assessments,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and you get quite a few referrals,
Yes.
whether it's from CPS, correct?
Right.
Yeah, you have to answer out loud.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah. CPS,
Yes.
or even the courts refer
Yes.
to you, okay? You see a lot of people that need services, and they fall out at different times, don't they? Sometimes people start off well, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes, yeah, you have to speak out. Sometimes people start off well, attend a lot of groups and individuals, correct?
Yes.
And then sometimes people try and don't come to quite a few of them. And then they're, right?
Right. Yes.
And then there's sometimes people are sporadic.
Yes.
Yes. But that's part of recovery, right? As a drug addict, that's part of recovery.
Yes.
A few steps forward, a few steps back, correct?
Yes. Not every single person.
No,
but
not every single person.
it does happen.
It does happen. Okay. Could you just share with this jury the impact that this problem has had? You're here on Portsmouth and here in Scioto County. Can you just share a little bit of...
Why don't you direct your question a little more to the topics of this case, Mr. Stratton?
Yes, Your Honor.
Objections sustained.
You've seen how... You're familiar with how this has impacted this case correct?
Yes.
You have seen other individuals who have failed to comply, just like Jessica did, correct?
Overruled.
You have seen other individuals fail to comply like Jessica has, correct?
Sure, yes.
Okay. But you make every effort to reach out to these individuals,
Yes, we do.
okay? And you try to bring them back into the fold.
Yes.
Okay, all right. You said that you noticed that she was defensive, edgy, angry, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yes. We're making a recording, so you have to, yeah. And you indicated that from your experience, that indicated what type of substance abuse?
Possibly methamphetamine, just based off of my experience and seeing the way that clients come in from an to their assessment. Most of the time, they're fresh off the street, so they may have just come off of their high and they're very edgy and anxiety ridden.
Okay.
Kind of moving around a lot.
Okay. When they are that way, are they more likely to act out? More likely to become violent?
Not necessarily always.
But you have seen it.
Not with my own eyes. I have not seen someone commit violence while under methamphetamine use.
I'm not necessarily saying you, but you've heard about it, correct? That people have.
Yeah, I'm sure that that's part of it. Could be with methamphetamine. It could be with heroin too.
Okay.
It just depending.
Okay. And you have followed all the protocol that Mahajan requires. Send out letters, contacts.
Yes.
Okay. All right. No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Stratton, Ms. Scott, you may cross-examine.
Good afternoon, Ms. Byrd.
Good afternoon.
You stated that you had a direct referral from Scioto County Children's Services Board agency for Jessica Groves. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you have the same referral for Daniel Groves in this case that you're
No.
aware of?
No.
Okay. So he was not part of any assessment process, not ordered
No.
or asked to come to your agency
No.
that you're aware of, correct? No. Okay. I think Mr. Stratton asked you a little bit about violence being and I don't know what exact word to use, but a symptom or a
Behavior.
outward behavior of drug usage. And he specifically mentioned methamphetamine or amphetamine use. And you said that's not likely, but it could.
Yes.
But what about other drugs that could be found in the system, such as fentanyl, opiates, such as morphine, things like that?
What are you asking?
That if there could be violent behavior associated with those types of drug usage.
Possibly, depending on the situation that that person was in.
Sure, okay. So drug usage, in your past experience, your practice, your education, your training, your knowledge, drug usage could lead to violent tendencies,
Yes.
correct? Okay,
Yes.
Thank you very much. That's all I have today.
You redirect.
Just a few, or maybe one. Ms. Byrd, did you see the defendant Jessica Groves between March 26th and June 10th?
No, ma'am.
Do you know whether she reported to Mahajan Clinic between those dates?
After that March 26th, I never saw her again.
Okay. Nothing further.
Ms. Scott?
That did not prompt anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this witness excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes.
Okay, you're free to go.
Thank you.
State may call their next witness.
Your Honor, state would call Greg Dunham.
Raise your right hand for me, please. Sir, you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Please have a seat. Teeman, you may inquire.
Sir, would you state your name for the record?
Greg Dunham.
And if you would, spell your last name for the court reporter.
Dunham, as in Mary.
And, sir, how are you employed?
Scioto County Juvenile Court.
In what capacity are you employed with the Scioto County Juvenile Court?
I am a intake officer and / investigation.
How long have you been with the Scioto County Juvenile Court?
Approximately 7 years.
Prior to being with the Scioto County Juvenile Court, were you employed?
Yes.
Where were you employed?
Domestic Relations Court.
What were your functions up there?
I was a bailiff for Judge Spears.
How long were you with the Domestic Relations Court?
Approximately 2.5 years.
And prior to being with the Domestic Relations Court, were you employed?
Homeland Security.
All right. And where was that based out of?
Columbus, Ohio.
Okay. How long were you with Homeland Security?
Approximately 1.5 years.
At some point, were you with the Scioto County Sheriff's Office?
Yes, sir.
How long were you with the Scioto County Sheriff's Office?
26 years.
And what was your rank upon, did you retire from there?
Yes, I did.
What was your rank upon retirement?
Captain.
All right. What do you do as an intake officer, investigator for the Scioto County Juvenile Court?
In and out of the schools, in and out of homes, basically dealing with truant children, abuse, neglect, and then I also run a program for Judge Lemon's inside. It's called a treatment tracker. I also talk to people who come in to file charges on children.
Okay. What is treatment tracker?
It's a program that was developed by Judge Lemons. Basically, if a baby is born or if there's a child removed from a home or mother and father are drug addicted, they report to me twice a month to bring in proof that they are doing treatment, so to help them to get their kids back.
Sir, I'm going to direct your attention to January of 2019. In your capacity as, let me ask this, are you a law enforcement officer with the Scioto County Juvenile Court?
A law enforcement officer?
Are you still a bailiff with the Scioto County Juvenile Court as well?
I can bailiff, yes.
Okay, all right. And in your capacity with Scioto County Juvenile Court, did you become familiar with a case involving a mother by the name of Jessica Groves, a father by the name of Daniel Groves, and their two children, Daniel Jr. and Dylan Groves?
I became familiar with Jessica Groves.
Okay. How did you become familiar with Jessica Groves?
Jessica Groves was ordered by the judge to report to me in the treatment tracker program. She had a child removed, and she was to report to me twice a month.
Okay. So we've already had vast discussion about how that came to be, but was Ms. Groves part of a children's services case that was filed for it through juvenile court?
Yes.
Okay. And as part of that case, was she ordered then to report to you, I think you said a monthly basis?
Twice a month.
Twice a month.
Second and fourth Wednesday of every month.
All right. And do you see Jessica Groves here in the courtroom, the person you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Okay, if you could point her out for the judge.
Be the lady to the right of Mr. Stratton.
Okay.
Reflect that the witness has pointed to and identified the defendant, Jessica Groves.
All right. When did you first meet Jessica Groves?
May I refer to notes?
Sure. What number are we on? Do you have your notes with you?
Yes.
Okay.
January 24th, 2019.
Okay. So, January 24th, 2019, where did you meet with Ms. Groves?
Would have been in my office or in the juvenile court.
Okay. At that meeting, what did you go over?
Basically what she was required to do, to report to me. She also met with another employee to have an assessment done as to whether or not we could get her into family drug court.
Okay, what's family drug court?
Family drug court is held on Tuesdays. It's a court that Judge Lemons runs. That is to reunify the parents back with their kids, basically drug addicted.
Okay. And does that family drug court sometimes run contemporaneously with a children's services case before the court?
Yes, there are children's services cases within the court.
Okay. Are there other kinds of cases besides that as well?
Yes, there are some that's not involved with children's services.
Okay. And so when was your next time with Ms. Groves? Did you go over her schedule to come and appear before you?
Yes.
Okay.
She is, everybody that reports to me is given a sheet that has the dates that they are to report.
Okay. And to your knowledge, in this case, did you give Jessica Groves a sheet?
Yes.
Okay. So, and just to confirm, was that she was supposed to report twice a month?
That is correct.
All right. Did she continue to report to you?
As I previously stated, she reported to me on January 24th. I did not see her again until March 28th.
Okay. How did you come to see her on March 28th?
She showed up at my office. I believe that was a report date.
Okay. Did she miss a number of report dates between the first date of January 24th and March 28th?
She would have missed 3.
Okay. So that would have been the 2 in February and an earlier one in March?
Yes.
Okay. Did she indicate why she missed those dates?
Told me she didn't have a ride. A ride was hard for her. Said that she was living in different places in Otway and she was having a hard time finding a ride.
Had you gone over opportunities for her to get a ride at an earlier time?
I'm sorry, repeat that, please.
Were there opportunities or services to provide for Jessica Groves to get rides to court?
Not that I'm aware of. I know that there are times, and especially with family drug court, that we go to pick these people up.
Did she call you or contact you in any way between that 24th and the 28th? All right. Did you sanction her at that time?
No, we did not.
Okay. And did you see her in that capacity at any other point as the intake officer in that regard?
No, after that date, I never seen her again until later.
Till June 11th? At some point, did you become aware that there was an issue with one of the children involved in the Groves court case?
Yes.
When do you recall first learning that there was an issue?
On the morning of May 31st, 2019.
Okay. And how did you discover that information?
I received a call on May 30th from Judge Lemons asking me if I could meet with him in the office on May 31st, that he had wanted to talk to me and discuss with me about a case.
Okay. And did you receive any instructions from the judge as to course of action that you were to take?
On the morning of the 31st, I talked to him and he explained to me that Children's Services had met with him on the 30th and that they were having trouble making contact with the Daniels or with the Groves. And asked me if I would try to make contact with them.
Did you attempt to make contacts with Daniel Groves?
I attempted to make contact with Daniel and Jessica Groves, yes.
Okay. What efforts did you take?
I went to the residence, knocked on the door, never got an answer, left a card asking for them to give me a call.
Okay. Do you know what date that was you went to their residence?
First day I went to the residence was then May 31st.
Okay. You said the first day. Were there subsequent dates that you went to the residence?
Say it again, please.
Were there other dates that you went to the residence?
Yes. I went to them May 31st. I never received an answer and left a card. June 3rd, I went back out to the residence. Again, knocked on the door, never received an answer. Was there on June 4th with no answer. June 5th. And June 10th.
Okay. I might have misspoke earlier. It was June 10th, the next day you saw Jessica Groves.
June 10th?
Yes. Were you at the search warrant execution of the house?
In the evening hours on June 10th, yes.
Okay.
I was also there earlier that day.
Okay. Did you see anyone earlier that day?
No, sir.
Did you try to contact any other individuals to locate Daniel or Jessica Groves?
Yes, I did.
Who all did you try to contact?
I made contact with the neighbor who lived directly across the street. I spoke to him. He advised me that he never really spoke with them a lot, but did see them coming in and out of the driveway. Told me they was driving an old red car with the window busted out. But the majority of the time they was on four-wheelers.
Okay.
Four-wheelers, I should say.
Did you contact other family members to see if they'd seen them?
Checked with the next door neighbor who was not a family member. He told me basically the same thing. Told me I was out there at the wrong time of the day. I need to be out there late in the evening. That he really never seen them during the day. I spoke with a brother, or someone who identified me as his brother. And he told me that they really didn't have anything to do with his brother or Jessica.
Okay. I'd like to direct your attention to that later evening, June 10th, the search warrant execution at the trailer. Did you have an opportunity to speak with Jessica out there?
Yes, I did.
All right.
Very briefly.
What did she say to you?
Detective Giles placed her in my car when she come out. When they got her out of the residence. They placed her in my backseat of my car.
What was her initial demeanor like?
Cold.
Okay. Did that change over time as you talked to her?
No.
Did you inquire about the location of Dylan Groves?
I asked Jessica, well, first of all, I had a paper to serve her, and I served her the paper and asked her if she remembered me, and she said yes. I asked Jessica about the baby and told her we were worried about the baby, and she told me that she didn't understand why we were out there looking for the baby. The Children's Services come and got that baby 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Okay. One moment. Did she make any other statements to you with regard to that?
In regard to the baby?
Yes.
No.
Okay. There were a number of people that you talked to. You recall talking to Daniel's sister.
Sister?
Daniel's sister. Did you talk to Daniel's sister? Well, let me ask it this way. What other relatives? You said you talked to somebody that claimed to be Daniel's brother. Were there other relatives you talked to?
I spoke to, I spoke to the Shiveries.
Okay. Had they seen them?
No.
You mentioned Daniel's. Had you spoke to anyone else?
I spoke to Miss Shivery's sister. Her name escapes me. I spoke to her by phone and also never met with her. She was going out of town on vacation. I spoke to her by phone.
Was there any indication that they had visited her or she had seen them?
No. Said that Jessica had made contact with her about paying the electric bill, and she did pay the electric bill for her.
Okay. Other than that, were they aware of their location?
No.
Were there other locations in the Otway area that you searched for the Groveses?
I went to the convenience store there in Raritan, and I spoke to, I believe it was an employee and a customer, who said they both were both familiar with the two. Said they'd been in and out of the store, but they'd never seen the baby before.
Never seen the baby?
No.
Thank you, sir. No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Tingland, Mr. Stratton, you may cross-examine.
Good afternoon, Mr. Dunham.
Good afternoon.
Just a couple of clarifications here. You had mentioned earlier that you met with her on the 24th of January, I believe.
Yes.
And then you said the 28th of March.
Correct.
Was it the 28th or was it the 27th? Because I know she had a court hearing on the 27th, correct?
I'm not familiar.
Okay. Testimony earlier from Patricia Capt said that they had a court hearing on the 27th and that she did a home visit on the 28th. Could your dates be wrong by a day or so?
She could have met with me on the 27th, and if I hadn't made an entry in our computer system, it would probably put the 28th.
Okay. All right. That's probably what the difference is there. You're meeting on the 27th with her, 27th, 28th, most likely the 27th. What was her demeanor?
That day, if my memory serves me correctly, she came in. She was telling me that the father had custody of the baby, and that she was not allowed around the home. Said she was having a hard time getting a ride, living with whoever she could find to live with that night.
Did she seem? You mentioned on June 10th that she seemed cold. Did she seem cold that day on March 28th? Did she seem distant?
No.
No. Was she talkative?
She was talkative in my office, yes.
Okay. Did she answer all your questions?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Did she have some questions of her own?
Not that I can remember.
Okay. So just clarify, you saw her on January 24th, March 27th, and then correct?
27th or 28th.
Okay. And then again on June 10th at the residence. Okay. All right. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Stratton. Ms. Scott, you may cross-examine.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Dunham.
Good afternoon, Ms. Scott.
In regards to that original case that was opened up by Children's Services with juvenile court, was there also a referral for Daniel Groves to meet with you in regards to the treatment tracker program?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Did you ever have opportunity to speak with him yourself or to perform a drug screen on him as part of your duties down at juvenile court?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Are you aware that he would be drug screened when he made appearances at juvenile court for cases such as these and abuse, neglect, dependency cases? Is that typical that parents would be drug screened?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So if he was drug screened by juvenile court, you have a certain protocol for that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And are your cups temperature sensitive?
Yes.
Okay. So they would tell the individual giving the test or conducting the test if urine was too cold.
Correct.
And that would be considered not a proper sample, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so what is the protocol when juvenile court administers a drug screen to a male person? Where do they go, first of all?
Men's bathroom.
Okay. And I'm assuming there's stalls and urinals in the men's bathroom.
That's correct.
Okay. Are they permitted to use a stall or they must stand at a urinal?
They must go to the urinal.
Okay. And so a urinal, do they have dividing walls on them down there in the men's bathroom?
Small walls, yes.
Small, okay. Do those walls obstruct the person's view of the person conducting the test and the person giving the sample?
I can't speak for the other people who would give those tests, but I know when I do my test, I make them step back if I can't see.
Okay. And is that the protocol of juvenile court when administering test?
That is my protocol, yes.
Okay.
Like I said, I can't speak for the other gentlemen.
Is there an across-the-board protocol of how the employees are instructed to conduct tests down there in juvenile court?
Observe them peeing into the cup, yes.
Okay. So the policy is your office is you go into the room with them.
Yes, ma'am.
Men stand at urinals, very small walls there, and they are observing the person putting the urine into the cup.
Yes,
correct?
That is correct.
I'm sorry?
That is correct.
Okay. And the cups have a temperature gauge on them?
Yes.
Okay. And then they're escorted out of they're sealed up. They hand them back to the person.
Yes.
They get sealed up promptly, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So they don't have opportunity to put water in them, dump them out, or anything to that effect, correct?
No.
Okay. In this case, you don't have any records, though, on you of Mr. Groves giving a urine sample because he was not part of the treatment tracker program.
I've never spoke to Mr. Groves.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Any further questions?
No, Your Honor.
Is this
No,
witness,
Your Honor, thank you.
is this witness free to go?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor.
He may be excused, thank you.
Gentlemen, you're free to go. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Council approach. Gentlemen of the jury, I believe today's made good headway in the case today. We are going to take our evening recess at this time. I am going to remind you of my earlier admonition. Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. Do not permit anyone to discuss it with you or in your presence. It is your duty not to form or express an opinion on this case until it's finally submitted to you. I'm going to ask that you be here at 5 till 9 in the morning, and we'll start the third day of testimony hopefully right at 9 o'clock. This time, court is recessed. I'll release you to the care of the bailiff, and he'll release you from the jury room.
You come folks in, back to those chairs. I'll be there again in the morning.